the civil rights movement, which is kind of at the full swing of the civil rights movement. It has this kind of highest legislative achievement with the passage of the Voting Rights Act. Watts erupts. The Watts riots erupted 5 days after that. And so people thought, like, okay, we've taken care of this problem. And then Watts explodes and says, you can't simply solve this problem. You think that you've pacified us, or you think that we've been placated, and there's like this whole other raft of issues that are coming out of this. And so at the point at which this country had allowed itself to indulge a particular kind of post-racial fantasy, kind of post-racial delusion, and people had come to think of Obama as kind of like their black friend, America's black friend, right? Who's going to vouch for your kind of non-racist viewpoints. And so the point at which Obama seemed to represent that, when everything unfolded in Ferguson, it was an indictment in that same kind of way. There was one other continuity that really struck me as well. One of the problems for people who wanted to push Ferguson under the rug, or sweep it under the rug, was, excuse me?
I'm
right, one of the problems with that was that it was national. This was not something that you could just say, okay, this is this one community that's, and there's one adjacent to St. Louis, and we can kind of isolate this here. And one of the things that made, the civil rights movement important, the first kind of gestures in 1948, when Harry Truman denounced lynching, which is the first time a president had made a public statement about the evils of lynching. He did that not specifically because of the South, but he did it because this was a concern of black people who were formerly in the South who had migrated to the North. Now there are black people in Pittsburgh, black people in Philadelphia, black people in Milwaukee, Chicago, New York, Boston, all these other places. And so you can't isolate a single kind of racial concern and say, well, we're not worried about, we want to appeal to white Southerners, so we're not going to talk about this issue anymore. And so the fact that Ferguson was able to become this kind of national issue in the way that you saw, I was seeing people who I knew were West Coast activists who were there, people who I knew from, all kinds of different places who I was running into there, was saying that you can't isolate this, and you can isolate it, you can kill it.
Yeah.
And this is something that's much bigger and much more broadly based. And so those things connected to me in terms of like looking at the dynamics of it. And the last thing I'll say just really quickly about this, I don't want to go on, is that if we want to look at this, this is how it plays out. Like one of the things that history gives you is a good window into how things may play out in the future. In 1935, there's an instance in Harlem where there's a black boy who is beaten by police, generates a riot, 1935 Harlem riot. The city of New York creates a commission, says we have to investigate the causes of the riot. They said the causes of the riot are the lack of opportunity and systemic racism. This is 1935. 8 years later, in 1943, there's another riot in Harlem, and you're like, well, look to the 1935 report. That's basically what happens. In 1965, this Watts riot, again, as a result of an instance of police brutality. The 43 riot was a result of a black soldier who was beaten by a white police officer in uniform in Harlem, and that generated another riot in the midst of World War II. 65 is a riot in Watts as a result of a police action. Out of that, there's the Macomb Commission, which says the problem is systemic lack of opportunity and racism. 1967, you have a cab driver beaten by police in Newark, which generates the Newark riot. Detroit, a raid on a bar by police. Detroit riot in 67. The Kerner Commission comes out of that. It says that you can guess the problem is systemic lack of opportunity and racism. 1992, Rodney King. There are two commissions that came out of that. And so when we see a commission that comes out, I don't want to be cynical, when we see a commission that comes out, Jay Nixon, when he said, I was like, now, it's almost like ventriloquism. It's like, now you're going to announce a commission.
Right.
And we know what will happen.
Right. On the